So cab driver Paul Stein picked up a man in San Francisco, thinking that it was going to be an ordinary cab drive down to downtown San Francisco. However, he didn't know that the man he picked up was the Zodiac killer. The police found Paul Stein with a gunshot wound to the head, dead. The only thing left behind was a bloody fingerprint. This fingerprint was unidentifiable according to the police and didn't match any of the suspects brought forth by the police. It seems a little fishy. So this is just one of the killings by the Zodiac killer. He was a notorious killer in the San Francisco area from the late 60s to the early 70s. He was described as a white man with light brown curly hair, overweight, around 30 to 35 years old. What I'm going to try to prove to you is that the Zodiac killer was more than one person. I'm going to tell you this by introducing the suspects, two main suspects, the eyewitness reports that prove that each of them are at least one of the murderers, and the motives that will tell you kind of the reason why that these men are the murderers. So the first suspect is Lawrence Kane. He was reported by one of the victim's sisters. Her name was Darlene Ferrum. So she reported him because Darlene was stalked and harassed by Lawrence Kane in the weeks prior to her murder. She found that this was the only reasonable suspect in her murder because Lawrence was the only real man in her life and he was just stalking her and harassing. The next piece of evidence against Lawrence Kane is a car ride that the Zodiac gave to a woman and her infant. He tricked the woman into giving her a ride somewhere, and then when he told her that he was the Zodiac and he was going to kill her, she escaped, went to the police, told him everything. And when she was shown a lineup of pictures of who it could possibly be, she chose Lawrence Kane. However, he doesn't match the physical appearance that was originally given in the Paul Stein case. This could be because, well, back to my proposition that there is more than one Zodiac killer. The next suspect would be Arthur Lee Allen. He's a suspect because of his best friend, Don Chaney, who reported him. They're ex-best friends. And then, because of this. And then he reported that Arthur had a Zodiac branded watch that had the same symbol that the Zodiac used in all of his letters. And he would also call himself the Zodiac. So if that isn't a giveaway, I don't know what it is. Also, there was 2 murders at Lake Berryessa up in Northern California. It was a couple that was murdered by a foot-long knife and rivets. And when the police searched Arthur Lee Allen's house, they found a knife and rivets. But for some reason, they didn't convict him for any of that, which is a little fishy on the police's side. Next, we're going to go into their motives. So the motives of these 2 men are pretty clear because, well, let's start off by saying the Zodiac sent in a bunch of letters to the press and the police taunting them, boasting about what a great Zodiac killer, or what a great serial killer he was. But the Zodiac also showed a great interest in children and in couples. Like, he killed multiple couples out in the middle of nowhere, and he would refer to them as kids. So he had a fixation on children, kids. So Arthur Lee Allen was actually a teacher, and he was arrested and fired on multiple accounts for child molestation. So he obviously had a problem with kids as well. And I think that kind of relates back to the Zodiac. Also, according to his friends, he had love problems. So he would be interested in a woman, they wouldn't like him back, he would get angry, drink about it, be violent, everything. So I feel like that would relate back to the Zodiac killing couples because he was jealous of them. For Lawrence Kane, years before the murders began, he was in a car accident and it caused heavy brain damage, which kind of messed with his mind. So the doctors that were interviewed by the police actually reported that this brain damage caused him to have trouble with self-gratification, so he wouldn't know how to feel good in a sense, and that would kind of lead to violence. So in the Zodiac letters, he would actually say that killing made him feel good. The Zodiac said that the killing made him feel good. It made him feel like he was just the most powerful person out there, like he could do anything. And I think that really correlates with Kane because he didn't know how to please himself. He didn't know what was right, what was wrong because of this brain damage. So I think that the eyewitness reports of the two suspects and the motives prove that each of these men are at least one of the murderers. They were working together, or they had some people working for them, which goes back to the bloody fingerprint left in Paul Stein's car. I believe it was left by one of the Zodiac workers, in a sense. So this proves that the Zodiac killer was more than one person.
Gesundheit. All right, I like the historical reference to the murder of the cab driver as an introduction. Your topic is pretty well identified. The subject, the particular proposition, I thought especially, and it sounded like you had a good preview of what the supporting structure was going to consist of, which kind of explained how it was you were arriving at the conclusion that you're presenting. So that setup felt pretty solid. But when you get into the body of the speech, I think it gets a little bit lost because you keep bouncing back and forth between the things that implicate both Lawrence Kane and Arthur Lee Allen, and that gets a little bit confusing. There's also an implication at some point that there may have been other people involved, either I mean, you make it sound like they're employees, but co-conspirators, or they are cohorts of the accused in this particular case. There's some suggestion that they might have been working together, but you provide no evidence to suggest that. What you did do was kind of review what some of the cases were, what some of the evidence was that might have implicated each of them. The thing that I think is the strongest part of your argument is the suggestion that you think that there is enough to implicate each of them in at least one of the murders. So in essence, that there was enough information, for instance, to convict Arthur Lee Allen, although he was never charged with the crime of killing the couple out by the lake, and that there was enough evidence to charge Lawrence King with the other crime, and that there was an eyewitness who could identify him, and that didn't happen. So those both had to be true in order for us to reach the conclusion that you're talking about. So if the Zodiac committed both crimes, and we know that one committed one crime and one committed the other crime, then there had to be more than two. That makes perfect sense, but your explanation of it, I think, is underwhelming. The proof that these people committed those particular crimes, you yourself said it seems a little fishy that the police didn't convict them. Almost certainly there's a reason why they didn't convict them or even charge them with these crimes, because the evidence was not as convincing as you suggest it is. There's no source citing in the presentation. I know that you got information from somewhere, but I don't know where that information came from, and I don't know why that information is not being contrasted to other information on the case. It's a little bit complicated to be trying to do this in a short period of time. I like the idea that you have. I like the way that you set up the structure of the argument that you're presenting, but the follow-through is not quite as strong as it needs to be. It's reasonably well delivered. Like I said, though, I think that you're relying on a lot of factual data and a couple of examples here and there, but the sources for any of that information are not provided. And then the inferences that you're drawing from that data, I think, are awfully strong given the weakness of some of the relationships that are going on there. And again, I think the conclusion that you're drawing is not necessarily the one that was drawn by professionals who were responsible for investigating, arresting, and prosecuting these people. And I think that seems to suggest that there's a reason why they didn't support the theory that you have. All right, thank you.